Hello, everyone. TJIF for sure. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the Joy Reid Show. Big up to the chats. I can see people are already early in the chats. The good students have already popped into the chats, and we see you guys. We appreciate each and every one of you being here. All the early birdies. Karen Stooks in the house. Team Joy, my soror still in the house. Early birdie, and all the other folks that have popped in early. The lemon hands, of course, we always have to big them up as well. But big up to everybody that's here, whether you are on Substack or Twitch. We got Elizabeth Wilson just popped in, giving some waves and little pink waves there. So thank you to everybody that's popped in on Twitch, on Substack, on Facebook, on... We got to get everybody. LinkedIn, all of you. We appreciate each and every one of you for coming in. I want to thank everybody that joined me for the Joy's House Insiders with Tim Miller yesterday and sticking with us through those like crazy technical problems. We're working on trying to get that post up. I've reached out to Substack tech supports to try to get that full post up because we ended up doing a good 45 minutes with Tim Miller. It was a lot of fun once we got it going. So thank you all for your patience on that. Also want to remind you guys to stick around after the show because we are doing a members only live. So if you're a member, if you're a reader, if you're a Team TJRS person, either on Substack or here on YouTube, wherever you are, please make sure you stick around because you can ask me anything. It's one of those things. And also don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. We are trying to get to our 500,000 subscribers on Substack, our 250,000 subscribers on, no, I said Substack. I meant 500,000 on YouTube, 250,000 on Substack. We are so excited about Twitch. Can I tell you, I've just started Twitch very recently. We're over 400 subscribers on Twitch. We're very excited about our Twitchies. Our Twitchies they're a small but mighty army, and we appreciate them all very much. So that is our housekeeping that I wanted to get to start off. I also want to let you guys know that we are now on day 3. We are on Vontélle Specs day number 3. Now, of course, we're out of town, as you can tell from our different location. And of course, me being me and my ADHD having kicked in, left the glasses at home. So we're just going to put up a pic of them. Let's just put a pic of them so you can see what they look like. We had tried them on last week. There they are. These are actually really cute. I wish I had them on right now. I wouldn't be able to hold them through the glasses, the whole show, because they have, shades, but they're fabulous. So this is our third Vontélle look. So it's called 7th Avenue Merlot. It's fabulous, sophisticated. It's got that beautiful deep Merlot color, perfect for our tastemakers, our fashionistas, fabulous. And as we mentioned on Monday and Wednesday, for this whole week, I have been introducing you to 3 of my favorite frames exclusively available at shopredbag.com through a partnership with our friends at Vontélle Eyewear. And of course, Vontélle being the Black woman-owned company that was founded by 2 Black women who set out to solve this problem of glasses often not fitting our faces. Women of color often have different shaped faces, wider nose bridges, just different facial shapes where your glass will slip down off your nose and not look perfect and chic. So they said, we can solve that. And they did it, and they created Vontélle Eyewear. And they've got all these amazing glasses available at shopredbag.com, including these fabulous 3 frames. And when you buy from shopredbag.com, they too are a business that's solving a problem, right? You want to buy independent. You don't always want to go to Amazon. You want to go to someplace unique that's going to allow you to shop with small businesses and businesses owned by women and people of color. Boom, shopredbag.com does that. So this partnership is allowing those 2 things to come together. So if you love these frames, here's what you're going to do. You're going to take a look at these frames, and you're going to now snap your picture. I should be still on the screen, but what you're going to do is Monday, I wore the Romare Bearden, the Block 2, 1972. Those are those Romare Bearden glasses that had the Romare Bearden like art with them, right? On Wednesday, I wore the Amina Tiffany Black, those beautiful black frames. And tonight, 7th Avenue Merlot. So what you're going to do is you're going to be able to vote on which of those 3 frames you like. So if you head over to shopredbag.com, if you want to get any of those frames, they're actually going to give you 10% off if you use the code JOY. But if you go to our shop at shop.joyreid.com or shop.joyanreid.com, we're going to let you vote on which of the frames you like the best. And you're really helping us if you do it, because we're going to create our own readers, and we want to get your opinion on what shapes, what glass, what sort of color schemes, the things that you like. So we want to get your votes We're going to go ahead and start tabulating the votes this weekend, and we're going to give you an answer next week on which frame won. Okay, and you also can, if you want to shop any of the glasses, please feel free to do that too. Thank you to Vontélle and to shopredbag.com. All right, let's get to the headlines. Let's get right to the business of the day. Now, I'm sure that you guys have seen already that old Whiskey Pete Kegseth. I like that Waj calls him Kegseth. You know, he stood at the Pentagon podium and he started by reading a passage from the Bible, comparing the press to the Pharisees of the Bible, okay? Then he whined about how we never get any positive coverage. It's just relentlessly negative coverage. He whined about that regarding Trump and Bibi the Butcher's failed war, saying he's not sure whose side the press is really on. And I'm thinking maybe his sort of unhappiness and anger is really about the fact that he was busted in another appearance before a bunch of, I think, Pentagon employees attempting to read a different Bible passage they thought was a Bible passage that turns out not to be from the Bible at all. No. This was a passage that was actually the single most epic scene from one of my favorite films, the Quentin Tarantino classic, Pulp Fiction. And here we are.
So the prayer is Caesar 25:17, and it reads, and pray with me, please. The path of the downed aviator is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who in the name of camaraderie and duty shepherd the lost through the valley of darkness. For he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to capture and destroy my brother. And you will know my call sign is Sandy 1 when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
And you will know my name is the Lord. I love Samuel L. Jackson, one of the greatest actors of all time. When I have set my vengeance upon me. Okay, so oops. I can imagine someone in his staff was like, yeah, let's use this verse. He'll love it. It's from Pulp Fiction. It's very swaggy and we'll just use it. Yeah. So there's a bunch of things wrong with that. Obviously, first of all, this is Mr. Bible Thumper who doesn't know that there's no book in the Bible called Caesar. So I guess since he didn't recognize Caesar, this fictional biblical verse, or sort of a book of the Bible that he made up in his head, he said, well, they must have really meant Ezekiel. He's like, they must have meant Ezekiel. And it was not Caesar 25:17, but really Ezekiel 25:16. And so that is the excuse that he used literally in real time for why he's reading this Bible verse that is really from Pulp Fiction. So you know me, I had to go into a wormhole. And I was like, let me go ahead and look up Ezekiel 17. I'm going to go ahead and look up the verse that he thought he was reading, which is similar. There's a similar verse in Ezekiel. But then I was like, I want to go deep in that because you know me, I'm a nerd. I'm like, let me find out who exactly Ezekiel was. So here's who Ezekiel was. Ezekiel was a 30-year-old priest in Jerusalem who played crazy, right? And donned various costumes and went into the city and tried to get attention because he was trying to get the rebellious Israelites during the second Babylonian conquest to hear and accept a message which he received from a glowing UFO-style apparition of 4 giant beings, 4 of them, each of which had 4 faces, a human face, a lion face, an ox face, and an eagle face. They were all attached to one another by their outstretched angel wings, and they were all atop a glowing wheel. You remember the song Ezekiel saw the wheel spinning up in the middle of the air? Okay, so they're on a wheel, and they are all together with their big giant wings, holding up the flaming throne of a glowing human-like creature. This is in the Bible, that Ezekiel took to be the Lord himself, giving this message. And what the Lord God wanted Ezekiel to tell the Israelites is the following. I'm going to take this from something called the Bible Project online. It's a great place to get all these background nerdy details about biblical figures. And he's to tell them this, quote, he is to accuse Israel of breaking the covenant agreement with their God. Israel has given their allegiance to other gods and has been worshiping idols, which has led to rampant social injustice and violence. In response to all of this, God has appointed Ezekiel to warn Israel that the first Babylonian attack on Jerusalem would be matched by a second, except this time the city and its temple would be totally destroyed. Destruction of the second temple, something that Pete Hegseth is quite obsessed with. And, that's the same second temple that the settlers in Israel, the settler movement, the Ben Gvirs and Smotriches of the world, are claiming that they're going to rebuild this second temple that the Babylonians destroyed. They're going to rebuild it on top of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is what's there now, which is one of the bones of contention between the Palestinians and Israel. You see where I'm going with this? I mean, Pete is so close to getting it. He's so close. He's so close. He's almost there. Meanwhile, Pope Leo, who actually does know what's in the Bible and knows it from the difference between that and a movie, whose brother, by the way, in Chicago faced bomb threats this week. Nobody got hurt, thank God. He's still speaking, and here is his latest Chicago Creole Pope from the top rope.
Is being ravaged by a handful of tyrants, yet is held together by a multitude of supportive brothers and sisters. Jesus told us, "Blessed are the peacemakers." But woe to those who manipulate religion in the very name of God for their own military, economic, or political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth. The masters of war pretend not to know that it takes only a moment to destroy. Yet often, a lifetime is often not enough to rebuild. They turn a blind eye to the fact that billions of dollars are spent on killing, on devastation, yet the resources needed for healing, education, and restoration are nowhere to be found.
Wild, right? That the Pope, Leo, like the lion on one of the four faces there, is warning the Americans that they are worshiping idols and subjecting people to violence and greed and war. He's kind of Ezekiel in this moment. But one of those tyrants that he's talking about, Donald John Trump, had, let me just check my notes here. He had gone to war with Iran because they closed the Straits of Hormuz. And now the U.S. has, just checking again here, closed the Strait of Hormuz with a blockade in order to punish the Iranians for closing the Strait of Hormuz, to punish us and the Israelis for launching a war against them for no reason. So that makes a whole lot of no sense, right? So apparently the strait is now open again. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Trump has said that the U.S. naval blockade is on Iranian ports is going to continue and remain in full force after Iran's foreign minister said the Strait of Hormuz is completely open to commercial vessels, prompting initially shippers in the region to get confused, but oil prices to go down and stocks to go up. So it all makes no sense. The Iranian foreign minister said straits are open, oil prices went down, stocks went up, and then Trump said, no, they're still open. Let me let you guys listen to the announcement that ships at sea that are carrying oil tankers in the Gulf and are approaching the Strait of Hormuz. This is the announcement that they're hearing. The White House posted this on their X Twitter account.
And discontinue transit to Iran if that is your next port of call. Do not attempt to breach the blockade. Vessels will be boarded for interdiction and seizure, transiting to or from an Iranian port. Turn around and prepare to be boarded. If you do not comply with this blockade, we will use force. The whole of the United States Navy is ready to force compliance. Now.
Wait a minute. I thought we wanted the strait to be open. So now we're closing the strait so that, and threatening to board or shoot at ships who are, that doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, it doesn't make any sense. On top of that, Donald Trump is supposedly keeping the Strait of Hormuz shut, which we had been demanding, and he had cussed and demanded it be open. They said, oh, it's open. Now he says it's closed again. And he's doing that so he can negotiate yet another Iran deal following the one that he and his real estate buddy, Steve Witkoff, and his grifter son-in-law, Jared Kushner, had worked out days before we started bombing Iranian school kids. All right, let me quote the Wall Street Journal. Maybe they can make sense of this. Quote, President Trump said Friday that the U.S. and Iran would work together to extract Tehran's enriched uranium. Speaking to Reuters, the president said the uranium would later be transferred to the U.S. We're going to get it together. We're going to go in with Iran at a nice leisurely pace and go down and start excavating with big machinery will bring it back to the United States, Trump said. Trump said the nuclear dust, which is the weird shorthand he uses to describe Iran's uranium, would be recovered very soon. He says, I mean, Iran has nearly 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium. Trump is saying we're going to take it, that we're going to go and confiscate it. That apparently was also the mission of that flight at which 2 airmen got stranded and that we had to get back, and they went in and tried to take the uranium before. He's saying, no, we're going to get it. And here's what's so crazy. CNBC and others are reporting that the deal that the Trump regime is negotiating would exchange the enriched uranium for giving Iran, releasing to Iran $20 billion in funds that are being held in U.S. banks under sanctions. Now, recall the right went ballistic when President Obama, when he did his Iran deal, which was the best deal we've had with Iran in our lifetimes, he gave him $400 million. Trump's going to give him $20 billion. So his better negotiation is to give them even more money when they claimed on the right that Obama was funding terrorism by giving them $400 billion. None of this makes any sense, okay? So one of the challenges that these guys are having is that they have clearly lost this war. Trump is desperate to get out of it. He's willing to pay Iran basically $20 billion to make it stop while still keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed. But the other war that they're losing, and this is what we really want to talk about in this A block, is that they're also losing the meme war. We're giving them a meme war. Now, clearly the Trump regime was kind of built on memes. And clearly like 20-something incels run all of their accounts. And put this up if you could, Jason, A4. This is the kind of thing that you've become accustomed to seeing, right, in Trump world, right? They use memes to communicate with their base. They use movie clip mashups, Trump dressed up as Superman, all of that kind of thing. They also had this one weird thing, if you could put up A5, Jason, that was like this weird Department of Labor propaganda campaign that really looked like the 1930s Nazis. But that was like their attempt to say, we want real American white men to run the country, right? And then also there was the No King's Poop Plane. Who can forget the poop plane? This was the attempt to literally crap on the No Kings protest, where Donald Trump dressed up as a fighter pilot, despite him being a draft dodger during Vietnam. And he literally sprayed poop on the American people, including Harry Sisson, who's a very popular YouTuber. Okay, this was their version of, we're winning the meme war. And using memes, they really did attract particularly young men, including some young men of color, with this sort of politically incorrect visual humor on social media, which appealed to the sort of nonconformist desire to be different, right? From the PC millennials who were like woke. They're like, we're anti-woke and we're using these memes. And it was actually popular, and younger men particularly found this attractive. And it's a thing, right? Typically, movements are led by younger people. The civil rights movement was led by people in their early 20s. Even the so-called founders, the vaunted founders of the country, they were in their late 20s and early 30s when they made, war against the British crown. And young Iranians have also been at the forefront of the movements, both to overthrow the Shah and put in the mullahs, and now to oppose the mullahs. It's been younger people. So young people make movements. And even the MAGA movement was basically driven by particularly young men. But what's happened over time is that the meme wars have shifted. Now, if you look up at AA, Jason, the memes are like kind of turning on them. Now the memes that you see a lot are like Trump being a taco because he keeps switching out on his policies. The Chinese are doing huge meme wars against him on TikTok, making fun of the fact that he and Elon and JD Vance are going to have to work in a factory, And I mean, this has become the thing. But the biggest thing that I think has happened in this Iran war is that Iran, like young Iranians, have begun to mock this war in a very effective way. So let's play the first one. The Iranian embassy in South Africa picked up on an 80s theme to mock this Trump Hormuz blockade. Take a listen.
I will never give you up. The Strait of Hormuz must be shut. Blockade, blockade. In my head, just blockade. Please let the ships go through. Come on, at least a few. If you block me, then I block you. Blockade, blockade.
I mean, mean, you don't want to like bop to it, but it's kind of a bop. There's even a Minions one. We put this up. So there's a Minions one. Take a look at this Minions one real quick.
I'm going to count to 3. When I open my eyes, the straight must be open. 1, 2, 3. Yay!
And I want you to notice that, like, the people who made the Minions are like not objecting, right? People are not objecting to it, and the blockade one is hilarious. But the ones that by far have kind of taken over the interwebs are these Lego videos with hip hop and other musical tracks. Now, most of them are watermarked by a guy called Persia Boy. The BBC actually interviewed him. He is responsible, it seems, for most of these, and they have become the soundtrack to the Iran war. We're going to call it Iran War Spring on social media. Take a listen, just a few of them.
Yeah. They beg for a ceasefire. Now we bring our children to the table. Me not 68, me not 68. You killed our babies, now you wanna talk? Blood on the bags, ghosts in the seats. We remember everything, feel the heat.
Yo, Pete Hexif, this one's specially for you. You punk ass rapists, straight from Iran. Your tattoo covered clown with that cafe ink on your arm. Think you a crusader? Nah, just a drunk infidel in a fake uniform.
Yeah, you blew the bridge, posted the video proud. Power plants next, Stone Age talk out loud. Watch this. What? War crime, war crime, war crime, war crime. Bridge down, civilians cry. Trump on truth, social flexing while they die. Power plants next, blackouts in the night. Stone Age threat. Great Persia still shines bright.
Hey, orange pig. America first? Oops. Oh boy, that was the slogan you stole. But Bibi's pulling strings and your vote is getting cold. We're not just fighting for Iran, hear this clear. Your people reached out to us. Yeah, we got the DMs here. If one nation's gonna stand against the Epstein regime's fear, it's us till the last breath. We've been doing it for years.
Listen, I need to get some folks on to come talk with me about this. Join us now, of course, is Toure, host of the Toure Show News on YouTube, along with Akbar Shahid Ahmed, senior diplomatic correspondent for HuffPost and the author of an upcoming book on the Gaza war and the Biden administration called Crossing the Red Line. Hey, friends, you know I got to go to you first on this, Toure, because look, you don't want to dance to it, but number one, hip hop clearly rules the world. It is so universal that it is the soundtrack that the Iran, Persia Boy, and whoever else is making these memes are using. But do you think that this strategy is effective on their part in terms of communicating facts about the war?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to dance to it. I'm getting their perspective on things, which has always been super interesting. In one of the clips, they talked about they're still heartbroken around what happened at Manab. Maybe some Americans forgot about that. We didn't remember that they're still carrying that in the front of their hearts, that they actually went to the negotiation wearing black because they're still mourning them. So these videos are providing that context of how are they seeing it. There's definitely a hip hop diss track energy and vibe to it all. Like, I'm going to tell you who you are in your face and like recontextualize how the audience sees you. You're a war criminal, you're a pig, you're a thief, like all those sort of things. And, you know, Trump has his own memes that he's putting out around the war. It's just Iran is destroying him in this meme war. They're so much more interesting. They're so much more vibrant. And like I said, yeah, it's just, it is very informative to learn about how they see things.
Yeah, I mean, and Akbar, the thing about it is, the Iranian youth had been focused on fighting their own regime, fighting the mullahs and getting more personal freedoms for themselves, for women. That is what they were doing to great risk, and many times at risk of their lives, getting executed for it or marching in the streets is very dangerous in Iran. But what Trump and Bibi have managed to do is unite the youth on a different cause, which is to tell the story of their pain, right? This is what the people in Gaza did. What do you make of the fact that this is happening? And do you think this really reflects, I mean, I can't imagine it doesn't reflect the Iranian street. Their kids are getting killed.
Right, that kids, that infrastructure. Important to remember, before this war, the Iranians were the most pro-American group of young people in the Middle East, right? Higher than any Arab country, higher than Israel, with the US's closest partner in the Middle East. So this was a community that was looking to the US for inspiration to an extent, and certainly saw their regime as being opposed by the US. And some people did buy the rhetoric, even from Donald Trump, a stated opponent, frankly, of human rights, diplomacy, international law. But they did believe, okay, well, this guy represents something bigger than himself. And what you see in these videos that's quite interesting, Joy, is they're also reaching out beyond Trump to American troops, to Trump's base, to people who are talking about America first, right? And they're saying, we see an America beyond Trump. Do you see Trump the way we see him? And you see this in the references to the Epstein class. You see this in the references to personal enrichment, right? This idea that Trump is someone who is fleecing the American people while also hurting civilians in Iran. So it's also coming at this point where Trump is historically unpopular among Americans. So I think to Toure's point, it gets to a question of, is that kind of a cross-border weird synergy here, right? Where people are kind of understanding at a global level what this administration has really meant.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, you take it to Ray. I mean, it's the embassies in places like Zimbabwe and South Africa that are boosting these memes and pushing them, right? So it's coming with this sort of African perspective, and they're almost like CNN. Something happens on, at noon. By 4 p.m., it seems like they've got the story out with a song, with a diss track behind it, right? They are following the news minute by minute, going after Pete Hegseth. He does something stupid. They've got a diss track about it. It's so fast and it's so timely. It's almost like they're doing a running commentary that's almost like newsy.
It does push back on the notion that these people are not modern. They don't live in this century, and we need to suppress them as much as, well, actually, they are extremely modern. And I want to push back on one thing, because you said this sort of seems to represent the Tehran street. These videos are never critical of the regime. And obviously that is not acceptable in Iran. And we had wondered, how much is this coming from the Iranian regime, or how much of it is it coming from students or people who are like, on the side of the regime? They're never critiquing the regime. I'm sure if you could get Tehrannians like in a real quiet moment, like, okay, it's a safe space. You can say what you really, okay, I have very much critiques. We're very much afraid. They're very bad for us. But at the same time, we hate America even more. So, it's, look, I can never get over that this is an illegal war against a country that was negotiating with America in good faith when we attacked them because Israel convinced America to do it. So, to me, yes, Iran is the sympathetic actor in this, even though we don't have sympathy for this specific government. This country should never have been attacked.
And they're not just Akbar attacking Iran. I mean, Israel, they have waged a kind of war on Gaza that is so repugnant and repulsive that even MAGA is like, okay, we're off this train. Even MAGA can't roll with them anymore. And you did a piece at Huffington Post, at HuffPost, that talks about the fact that there was just this vote about whether this country that's now also laying waste to southern Lebanon, like they are destroying apartment buildings, schools. They're doing a Gaza-style operation in Lebanon now, genocide 2.0. And you wrote a piece about the fact that suddenly the vice grip that Israel had, at least on the Democrats, seems to be loosening. There was a vote about whether there should be more funding for Israel, including giving them, more bombs and bulldozers. Talk about how it kind of it didn't go the way that it normally goes.
Yeah, the Trump administration has tied itself so closely now to the continuation of kind of Israel's military campaigns, going back now to, of course, going back to the occupation, you can go back decades, but going back to 2023, October 7th, the horrific Hamas attack, and Israel's then really quite clearly disproportionate response in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria, and now extending into a war in Iran that's been hugely devastating for civilians. And what you've seen is there's a real resistance here in Washington to understanding the popular frustration there, right? So politicians and policy experts who are in a place where they are not accustomed to thinking about Israel as the bad guy in any way, shape, or form. I was talking to someone earlier this week who was explaining to me, look, in the US military context, we don't even track civilian harm by our partners like the Israelis, right? We don't even look at it from a DoD standpoint. Now you're seeing lawmakers being forced into this position. I think that's really important to remember is they're not choosing to go here. Yes, 40 Democrats and 40 aligned senators, which is a huge deal. That's close to half of the Senate. That's people who are moderates. It's not just Bernie Sanders. It's not just the AOCs of the world. These are people who are national security hawks. They stood up and said, we're not giving the Israelis more military aid. They were pushed to get there by activists and by the real awareness that US-backed Israeli policy has not led to more stability. It has not led to more justice, either for victims of October 7th or for anyone affected by these wars across the region. And I was struck by how many 2028 presidential candidates, so Cory Booker, deeply pro-Israel, Ruben Gallego, Mark Kelly, these people who are very much finger in the wind. They're not having a moral reckoning. They are just thinking, where's the party going? And let's kind of get there very quickly.
Well, Joy, this is the central issue for the party going forward. The voter base is very pro-Palestinian. About 2/3 of the voter base, Democratic voter base, has more sympathy for Palestinians than for Israelis, right? This had been trending before October 7th, and it exploded after October 7th. The Democratic voter base very much wants to hear it's a genocide, wants to see a two-state solution. And yet, even despite what we've seen very recently, the Democratic leadership is very pro-Israel because of the impact of the pro-Israel lobby, AIPAC and other groups like it. So this is going to be a huge problem. Democratic voters are going to say, do you call it a genocide? And Gavin Newsom and Josh Shapiro and Gretchen Whitmer will struggle to say yes. And we're like, we cannot vote for you if you can't at least do that. At least say, hey, let's stop giving Israel so much so it can be so offensive in the entire region. Nope, we can't agree to that. So how are we supposed to vote for you? This is the problem at the heart of the Democratic Party right now.
Yeah, I went through this list, to your very, very good point. Cory Booker, who was on I've Had It, and was not able to call what's happened in Gaza a genocide, which is a plain to your face genocide. He couldn't do it. He voted for this. This is a Bernie Sanders measure, okay? He voted for it. As Akbar said, Ruben Gallego did of Arizona. Both have Jewish family members. Ossoff, who is in a reelect, he voted. I don't know what his positions have been in the past, but he voted for it. He's also a Jewish American. Mark Kelly, who one might say may probably want to be president, want to run for president. Mark Kelly has been foursquare for Israel. When Bibi Netanyahu came to the U.S., he was in there clapping, with everyone else. He voted for it. Elisa Slotkin, who went on with Crystal Ball and could not say anything negative about Israel. She voted for it. Akbar first and then Toure. What do you make of those members? Because to me, that is just straight up, I might be this is how you can tell they're running for president, right?
Well, I was chasing Elisa Slotkin in particular prior to this, and her team just had no desire to say anything about where she might land, right? And then
they don't even respond to our calls.
Well, it's so interesting, right? Because what so many of the folks on the Hill and sort of in the advocacy community working on this were telling me was, it's a domino effect. Basically, people are looking for, do I have the safety of numbers, and where do I need to go to make myself look right? And that's really where it is. So I think it gets to this question going forward for Democrats of what they offer. it is not going to be enough to say we oppose Benjamin Netanyahu, and we're not going to look at the fact that the vast majority of the Israeli political establishment, in fact, is deeply anti-Palestinian, doesn't want any accountability for anything that's happened since October 7th, right? That's going to be insufficient.
Yeah. And Toure, I mean, Chuck Schumer, of course, voted no. He said in February that one of his jobs as the first Jewish minority leader in the Senate is to protect Israel. And he's very clear he's never going to vote for anything like this. He didn't vote for. He and Kristen Gillibrand both voted no. But let's just say Democrats take the Senate. Does this wind up becoming an issue in whether he can be leader?
Not yet. I mean, and I think the key fact with Schumer is less that he personally is Jewish, but there is a large Jewish contingent that he represents, and AIPAC has given him something like $4 or $6 million. So, you know, that's who he needs. Those are his bosses. That's who he needs to support. It's still not a Democratic leadership that is pro-Palestinian enough to force that issue. We still have too much of a control of the money, AIPAC and its like-minded groups, versus the power of what the voters want. The power of what the voters want right now is not strong enough. I think the recent attack on Hassan Piker was a reflection of the AIPAC class saying there's a loud pro-Palestinian voice on the left. We need to discredit, silence, toxify that person so that position is silenced and goes away. So the name that would come up if we talked about this behind closed doors with Democratic lawmakers would be Jamal Bowman or Cori Bush, people who were chased out of office by AIPAC, people who are willing to call it a genocide, and AIPAC went after them and pushed them out of office. So, other elected officials are going to have to confront, do I have the strength in my district, to say it's a genocide and to go against AIPAC, or do I not? Or does AIPAC have too much money and too much power in this moment, in this situation, that I can't go against them?
Yeah, Akbar, exit question to you, because there has been a concerted effort to use legal maneuvers, to use the Justice Department, to use deportation, to really shut down any opposition to this Israeli regime on college campuses, in states. States are passing laws, effectively making it illegal, or you can't get contracts if you're against this. I mean, they've made it very clear that this is the idea that they want to make it almost illegal. But the base on the right is also against these genocides. They're against what's happening in Lebanon and Gaza and Iran. Is that lobby, does it have the same strength in April of 2026 that it did in April of 2025?
Well, I think that's where Democrats have to walk a tightrope, right? Because they are still primarily going to want to say we are pro-Israel. They're going to argue we're pro-Israel trying to be democratic. We're pro-Israel trying to live up to the values it says it shares with the US. And that's where the question of dealing with the right, I think, is going to become critical. Because if you see this entire space of how do we have a realistic conversation about what Israel has done, how the relationship can be overhauled, to Tucker Carlson, to Marjorie Taylor Greene, you are going to have more of those anti-Semitic dog whistles. You are going to have more of a push from the right? So I think the silencing is going to strongly backfire, and you're seeing it in the way that people understand the targeting of Mahmoud Khalil, the targeting of Ramesh Turk, the deportations. They see that as part of Trump's broader attack on American democracy. And I think that memory, that muscle memory, doesn't go back for people trying to turn the page. And again, reckon with how Biden got us here. Don't forget the campus crackdown was encouraged by the Biden administration very strongly.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I said last question, but I have just one more question for you, Toure. At some point, do you think that the wannabes on the MAGA side, to go back to where we started, will try to match Persia Boy's energy and make their own pro-war memes? And how much of a disaster would that be?
They can't. I mean, this is something we've been laughing at the right over for decades. There is no culture on the right. Great artists don't come from the right or don't become conservatives. Like, almost all open-minded great artists are lefties. I mean, you see this over and over and over throughout history. If they had some great creative people to make that sort of stuff, they would have already employed them. But they don't have
I promise
anything.
you, if Nicki Minaj and Kanye West make a pro war diss track, I'm done. Like, I'm burning my iPhone and all songs there that are loaded on there. And Toure, we appreciate you. Akbar, Shahid Ahmed, I can't wait for your book to come out. We're going to talk about that at some point too. Thank y'all very much. Appreciate you guys. Have a great weekend. I promise you.
Thank
they better
you.
not try. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it, Nikki. Don't do it. You don't want to go there at all. Let's thank one of our wonderful sponsors. This wonderful episode of the Joy Reid Show is brought to you by our friends at bookshop.org. Now, listen, we are readers, right? It's like a pun intended. We love to read. And so we do love bookshop.org. And what I love about them is that they support independent booksellers, all the ones that you know and love, the Mahogany Books of the world, the Baldwin Books of the world. Since 2020, bookshop.org has raised more than $40 million for local bookstores. They are unapologetically anti-Amazon, which we love. They believe local bookstores are essential community hubs that foster culture and curiosity and a love of reading. And they are committed to helping them survive and thrive in this environment. They are a certified B Corp and have been named Best for the World by B Labs. And that is one of the reasons that we love them. Where you shop for books actually matters. When you purchase from bookshop.org, you are supporting more than 2,500 local independent bookstores across the country. Independent bookstores are where we want to purchase because you could walk in there, sit down, get yourself a cup of coffee, commune with your neighbors, be with your friends, and be with your family. Taking our kids to the bookstore was always one of our favorite things. Other than the library, it's the most important place to be. So what we want you all to do is to support bookstore, to go on bookshop.org, go on their little bookstore map, click on it, put your zip code in, and they will point you to some of the small local independent bookstores in your neighborhood. Then you can make your purchase online from those bookstores. And that way you're supporting those local bookstores rather than the Amazon monster. We hope that you will do that. And if you decide to do that, you can get a discount. You can use the code JOY, J-O-Y, to get 10% off your next order at bookshop.org. Just use the code JOY at bookshop.org for 10% off. We love books, so we want you all to do that. So thank you, bookshop.org, for supporting this show. Now, as we mentioned, just on the other side of that break, those Senate resolutions authored by Bernie Sanders got an unprecedented level of support from the Democratic caucus, even while Chuck Schumer voted against both. And it is interesting that the Democrats, as we said, that are up for re-election or maybe want to be president, all voted for it. But in the House, it's still really a bipartisan pro-Israel world. Take a listen to these two people talking.
What were your thoughts on this debate between offensive and defensive weapons to Israel?
I'm for helping our best friend and best ally, Israel, so that they have the qualitative advantage in weaponry and everything else. I want to help our friends, they're our ally.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how many Americans, Israeli soldiers and settlers have killed in the past 20 years?
I'm totally for helping our friend and ally, the one democracy in the Middle East. I'm for helping Israel.
But you don't know how many Americans they've killed?
I'm for helping Israel. I mentioned your first question. I'm for helping.
But you have no answer about the Americans killed by Israel.
I don't know of any.
You don't know of any Americans killed by Israel? Your impression of this conversation amongst your colleagues about the differences between offensive and defensive aid to Israel, and potentially choosing to condition aid to Israel based on them following international law?
There's been a debate up here for a long period of time on offensive weapons, okay? And I think that debate is appropriate. I don't have a problem with that. It's interesting that the debate now is going on to defensive weapons, because for the longest time, the folks that were against offensive weapons said, but we're for protecting civilians, and that's why we're for continuing either funding for Iron Dome or other THAAD missile systems, things of that nature. Now there's this new discussion that, okay, we don't want to provide money for defensive purposes, which seems to go against, obviously, this idea that we don't want civilians to be harmed. They're going to say, well, we want more civilian death, because if you remove Iron Dome funding, it will lead to civilian death. And they're saying, well, it's an unfair advantage. Well, countries have unfair advantages. We have an unfair advantage, right? Our military is an unfair advantage with the Iranians. That's how this stuff works. Israel developed technology. Well, we shouldn't pay for it. Okay, well, we have THAAD missile systems in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Bahrain. We paid for that. They didn't pay for that. We gave them defensive THAAD missile systems. How come no one's saying remove those defensive missile systems? So this is where now their double, triple standard on Israel is really showing, in my opinion. It totally takes any argument that they had that they're not anti-Israel and they're for protecting civilians if they're going to come for Iron Dome funding.
You will not be surprised that Gerald Moskowitz, who is the second person you heard, Jim Jordan, of course, was the first person that you heard in that montage, is a prolific recipient of AIPAC funding. We can put that on B2, whereas, he gets quite a bit of money from AIPAC. Joining me now is Oliver Larkin, a Bernie Sanders 2016 staffer, union organizer, and progressive candidate who is running against that second man that you saw in that clip, who is, of course, Jared Moskowitz of Florida's 23rd district. And there you go. There is the money. Oliver Larkin, welcome.
Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you so much for having me.
So what did the answer that Gerald Moskowitz gave is, we give THAAD missile systems to Bahrain and to the Saudis. We're distributing weapons all over the Middle East. Why not Israel?
Yeah, there's a clear difference here, and it is that the United States has military bases on Bahrain, on Qatar, on Saudi Arabia's soil, and that is not the case with Israel. So it's not the double standard that Congressman Moskowitz is making it out to be. The United States supports our military members across the world with defense systems, but this is qualitatively different than what the United States is providing to Israel at taxpayer expense when Israel is using these weapons to initiate offensive engagements, invading Lebanon, bombing Syria, Yemen, countries all across the Middle East. It's not only Gaza and the West Bank, it is increasingly the belligerence that we're seeing from the Netanyahu government all across the region, and the United States is supporting that with our taxpayer dollars. And I find it interesting that the Zateo clip that you were playing of Congressman Moskowitz being asked, one of the follow-up questions was, when it comes to violating international law, does that put a condition on U.S. military aid to Israel? And what Congressman Moskowitz responded with was, as long as they are a U.S. ally, they will get our support, regardless of whether or not Israel is violating international law, which they currently are, and by providing arms, the United States is as well.
During the Biden administration, that was roughly the same take. I can recall press conferences where Middle East Eye, or almost never an American or U.S.-based news organization, but sometimes, an international organization would ask the then Secretary of State Blinken the same question. There is a U.S. law that says that we cannot provide weapons to a country that's violating international law. That's actually an American law. And Blinken would be asked about it, and his answer would be roughly the same. They're a U.S. ally, and they're our friend, and that's it. Do you view this issue of just unlimited money to Israel, no matter what they do, as a Republican issue, a bipartisan issue? What kind of an issue do you think it is?
Unfortunately, this is a bipartisan issue. The CNN clip that you were just playing, AIPAC literally quote tweeted that and said, "Thank you, Representative Moskowitz." So this has been a long-held bipartisan position in the United States Congress, where members of both parties are funded by AIPAC and the affiliated Israel lobby. And it provides an enormous problem when it comes to the United States being defunded, when we see our Medicaid being cut, when we see food stamps being cut, and then uncritically, we're spending dozens of billions of dollars to fund a foreign military that, quite frankly, has it better than we do when it comes to Israel having free college education, free healthcare for their citizens. We do not have that here in the United States, so we simply cannot afford. And this is part of a broader, we talk about Israel, but this is part of a broader U.S. belligerence when it comes to the world stage, where we're being asked to send $200 billion in supplemental military funding for this illegal war with Iran, when we already have the record highest Pentagon budget in United States history. So this is one plank of a much larger military industrial complex that is really just completely controlling the congressional interests on both the Republican and Democratic sides.
If you're in Congress, what would you prefer that we spend this money on? You make a very good point. We're going to talk about that in the next block, that the current ask from the Pentagon is for a $1.5 trillion Pentagon budget, which is eye-popping. It's far larger than what we spent in World War II. And there never seems to be a limit to how much money they want. What would you prefer that we be spending money on as a member of Congress? What would you push for?
Yeah, just for a fraction of the cost of what this illegal war with Iran is costing us, we could provide free college education to every single American. And this includes 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, trade and vocational schools. If we're going to pass initiatives like a Green New Deal, rebuild our infrastructure, and transition our economy to 100% clean, renewable energy, then we need to provide the job training and the education for our people so that we can fill those work requirements and actually be able to invest in the United States. So I would say it starts with education from college all the way down to universal pre-K. These are many of the initiatives that were included in the Build Back Better Act that was attempted to pass under the Biden administration, was held up by some more conservative Democrats. But these are the kinds of things that we should be spending our money on Medicare for all, on raising the minimum wage to a living wage, and providing union protections to every American worker.
The things that you just mentioned have come up a lot. A lot of members of the squad have pushed for them for many, many years. These are very Bernie Sandersian ideas that, people who align with him as you do have pushed for. Democratic leadership they've never really embraced them. They've never really pushed for them. What do you make of the current leadership of the Democratic Party? Because they don't seem to think that these are the priorities, the things that you just mentioned.
Yeah, I believe that we need a change in leadership at the top of the Democratic Party. That's why when Axios reached out to our campaign last October and they surveyed Democrats running for Congress across the country, I was one of 20 that said we needed a change from leader Hakeem Jeffries as the leader of the House Democratic Caucus. And hopefully we take back the House majority in November. I believe we're on track to do that with the support we're seeing across the country with this amazing special election victory that Ana Lilia Mejia just scored in New Jersey last night, with a massive shift in the Democratic Party's direction. We need leadership that meets that moment. When I was seeing Leader Jeffries and as well as Leader Schumer and many other members of the New York delegation refusing to endorse our party's nominee, Zohran Mamdani, against Andrew Cuomo, who at that point was being backed by Donald Trump and the billionaire class. If vote blue, no matter who is going to apply across the board, then it certainly needs to apply when it is the next generation choosing more progressive leadership for our country, because that is what is going to motivate the people that we need to turn out. When Joe Biden won in 2020, he got 81 million votes. 7 million votes dropped off from the Democratic ticket between 2020 and 2024. And it was primarily because we saw the Biden administration denying its own complicity in the Gaza genocide. And we saw the cost of living rising ever and ever higher here in the United States, while the Biden administration abandoned their promise in 2020 to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. As soon as Senator Sinema gave that thumbs down, Democrats dropped it like a hot potato. We need leadership that fights for a basic cost of living affordability standard that allows each and every American to achieve the American dream. And it's going to take a change in leadership at the top. And I believe that with a committed group of progressives that are willing to stand up to Democratic Party leadership, we can see a change. Because with that absolute sea change in the Senate the other evening, with 40 out of 47 members of the Senate Democratic Caucus voting to not only ban offensive military weaponry to Israel, but to ban these Caterpillar equipment, the bulldozers. $295 million that has been used to demolish Palestinian homes was used in the assault on Al-Shifa Hospital, that Israel is used to commit war crimes, point blank. According to Amnesty International, the destruction of refugee camps, the destruction of an estimated 92% of homes in Gaza. These are war crimes. And if we have Democratic leadership that supports that and supports the Trump agenda, then we need to change Democratic leadership.
Normally, one of the things that I think prevents a lot of Democrats, even if they may think some of the things that you say are true and may agree with them, AIPAC spends a lot of money to remove members of Congress who defy them. Are you prepared to fight that battle? Because my presumption is they're going to spend a lot of money for your opponent, for Mr. Moskowitz, and against you. How do you combat that?
Yeah, we are very prepared for that. And just to frame the terms of our race in this primary in Florida's 23rd district, Joy, I know you know South Florida well. We're in beautiful Broward and Palm Beach County, from Fort Lauderdale up to Boca Raton. We polled our district last month, and what we found is that by a 2-to-1 margin, a 2-to-1 majority of people want to either condition, reduce, or cease military aid to Israel altogether. This is 491 likely Democratic voters. Just a bare sliver, about 21%, want to maintain aid at current levels, and even fewer want to increase military aid to Israel. So this is a 2-to-1 issue on AIPAC's pet project that they're on the wrong side of when it comes to the Democratic primary. And I want to remind people that when we talk about AIPAC, this is an organization that endorsed 109 January 6th insurrectionists supporting Republicans in the 2022 midterms. This is not an organization that is committed to democracy or committed to our civil liberties here in the United States of America. It is controlled by billionaire and corporate interests, and we know that they're going to come in with an ungodly amount of money to spend if they even believe that Congressman Moskowitz is vulnerable, which with every single day that we're spending on the doors having these conversations, it is increasingly clear that based on our polling, but also the conversations we're having every day, that South Floridians and working class people across the country are ready for change. This is data that's backed up in the national polling that we see on Israel, disapproval of U.S. military aid to this country that is committing genocide, that is committing apartheid. And we're going to knock on every door in our district. We're going to knock on 80,000 doors between now and August 18th. And we're generating the small dollar donations. I heard you speaking about Hassan Piker earlier. I was very glad to go on Hassan Piker's stream last month, and that really was a sea change in how our race is being perceived across the country. People see that progressive issues are not just for the deep blue parts of the country, they're increasingly for the battleground parts of the country where I was reflecting last night on Ana Lilia Mejia winning in a D+5 district when Democrats nominated a Bernie-endorsed progressive for governor in 2018, Andrew Gillum. We came within less than half of a percentage point of knocking off Ron DeSantis. And we need to go back to that if we're really going to put Florida back on the map. This is a working class state. This is a state that is wonderfully diverse with people from all across the Latin America, the Caribbean, the West Indies. We've got people from all walks of life, and a progressive value set is, regardless of your background, what people are supporting. They want to see Medicare for all. They want to see corporate PAC money out of our elections. They want to see us taking on the corruption and raising the living standards for working class people in South Florida and all across the country.
Well, and yet, you mentioned that I know something about Florida, lived there 14 years. The diverse beautiful mosaic that you talked about contains a lot of conservative people, a lot, Cuban Americans, very conservative, Venezuelan Americans, very conservative, even a lot of Haitian Americans tend to, be very conservative voters. And there's even immigration has not necessarily moved much of that population. I mean, the absolute devastation, meted out on Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans. South Florida has been ground zero because it just, as you said, it's so diverse. It hasn't necessarily moved that state any further to the left, if we're being honest, right? And it's also a very conservative state when it comes to things like taxes. I sometimes feel like Florida would vote for, a lump of warm oatmeal. If it was a Republican, it would cut their taxes. All they care about is tax cuts, right? How do you get past that? Even in South Florida, which is less right-wing than the rest of the state, how do you get past a Moskowitz who at one point worked in the DeSantis administration? That's how sort of fluid he is politically, that he can work with them, and he keeps getting reelected.
Yeah, I would say, and maybe I'll tackle this in two different approaches. The first one is just on the basic cost of living, because I think that is what even people who hold more conservative beliefs, maybe they bought what Trump was selling when it came to immigration, especially a lot of these right-wing immigrants that moved to Florida and believe that they came the right way, but everyone else needs to have the government crack down on them. Everyone, if you want to look at a majoritarian position in South Florida and in our state in general, it is the cost of living. Florida Atlantic University, which is a public university housed right here in our district in the 23rd District's city of Boca Raton, they found that more than half of Floridians are considering leaving our state due to the cost of living crisis. And we have a Congressman Moskowitz, who's taken, for instance, tens of thousands of dollars from NextEra Energy, the parent company of Florida Power and Light, as Florida Power and Light is raising Floridians' utility rates to the tune of $7 billion. So this is someone who is not only receiving the corporate PAC donations, but is trading the stocks of these companies and these corporations that are raising the cost of living for South Floridians. But I will also say that I was knocking on doors in Little Havana the last 2 weekends of the Miami mayoral runoff election for Eileen Higgins, the first woman elected mayor in the city, in the city's history, the first Democrat in over a quarter century. And
La
people
gringa.
really, sí, la gringa. Claro que sí. So we've seen that even these cost of living concerns, as well as the fear over ICE, I will say that a lot of conservatives really believed what Trump was saying, that they were going to go after the worst of the worst. But the truth of the matter is that in fiscal year 2026, upwards of 3/4 of people that ICE are detaining have no criminal conviction on their record whatsoever. This is a status that was enabled by Congressman Moskowitz as the only Florida Democrat to vote for Trump and Republicans pro-ICE Lake and Riley Act. After Trump ran on mass detention and deportation in 2024, this was the very first law that he signed. There is no pretending that it had any other objective than carrying out the Trump Stephen Miller initiative of ethnically cleansing the United States of Latinos and anyone else they deem undesirable. So people really feel betrayed by that when Florida International University, when FIU, as well as FAU have these 287G agreements working with ICE that are actually having local law enforcement carrying out the ICE tactics that we see ICE itself doing in Los Angeles or in Minneapolis, in these other blue states that are not complying in the same way that Florida has. We have a system here where people are complying in advance. And that is one of the clear symptoms of a fascist government. And we certainly see that with how punitive Tallahassee and Ron DeSantis have been. And Congressman Moskowitz has been one to bite his tongue. He actually wrote the personal letter of recommendation for Geo Group Executive Vice President, a private prison executive, Adam Hasner, to become president of Florida Atlantic University. This is also someone who, as a matter of fact, was Republican House Majority Leader in Tallahassee. So when we have Congressman Moskowitz supporting Republican private prison executives to lead our public universities, when he is going on right-wing podcasts and saying that I am a twice-appointed Ron DeSantis Democrat, as my socialist opponent likes to point out, I'm getting some awfully good practice against running against a Republican in the general election because Congressman Moskowitz is behaving as one right now. And I would posit that here in Broward County, Blue Broward County, the highest Democratic voter registration in the state of Florida, the driver of the competitiveness that saw Barack Obama carry our state twice. I was a 16-year-old motor voter registry with the Democratic Party at 16 years old in 2008 because I believed in that Obama vision of a Democratic Party and of a government that could achieve big things. And I think we've gotten away from that. And when we see Congressman Moskowitz, again, continuing to tack to the conservative side of things, certainly Florida has had an influx of conservatives in recent years. And DeSantis really has used the bully pulpit to his tremendous advantage. But if we're going to turn things around, we need a progressive Democrat that's actually going to stand up for the core values of our party and articulate a different vision rather than someone who's going to just go be a handmaiden to fascism.
Wow. Oliver Larkin, impressive young man. And having lived in Broward County, you have a shot. You have a shot, my friend. You definitely have a shot. Broward is an interesting county. It's not like the rest of Florida. It's very unique. Wishing you the best of luck. I think this is the energy that I think my former state needs. So best of luck. Please come back. Is Moskowitz going to debate you? Do you guys have a debate coming up?
I certainly hope so. I was at an Indivisible Boca Raton town hall on Monday, and I actually got a question from one of the audience members. And my understanding is that Congressman Moskowitz actually ducked out and dropped out of the Indivisible Boca town hall that they were supposed to have with him. So he has not had any public town halls. He does not seem interested in debating, but I'm game anytime, anywhere.
Ooh, y'all can come on here. Listen, if Congressman Moskowitz wants to come on here and debate Oliver Larkin right here on the Joy Reid Show, we will host it. Oliver Larkin, best of luck. Please let everyone know where they can support you. What's your website?
www.oliverforcongress.com. Please chip in some money if you can. You can also find us on social media. We're on all the social medias, even the ones that I, as a millennial, am just getting attuned to. But we're everywhere, and you can find us on oliverforcongress.com. Thank you so much, Joy, for having me on. This conversation has been a real pleasure.
Of course. Thank you very much. Oliverforcongress.com, y'all. Throw a few coins in if you guys can help them out. Thank you very much. Best of luck. Look, we love having somebody on from the former county where we used to live. Broward County could use some fresh eyes and fresh thinking. And he seems quite impressive. Let us know in the chat what you think about him. Welcome to hour 2 of the Joy Reid Show. I enjoyed that conversation. I think he seems great. So he was a 16-year-old motor voter volunteer while I was working on that 08 campaign, just to show you how auntie I am. So he's very young, but that's what we need. You know, you need the fresh eyes, you need the fresh energy. All right, welcome to the second hour of the Joy Reid Show. If you've not hit like and subscribe, why not? I feel like I like it, so I think you guys should like it too. Hit like and subscribe. Also hit that share button. Make sure that you're sharing this with as many people as possible. Share it with 5 friends, 10 friends, however many friends you want, because we are trying to climb our way up to 500,000 subscribers on the YouTube, and of course to 250K on Substack. We're doing pretty well on Facebook as well as Twitch as well. We're happy with our Twitchies, 400 plus strong. If you're a Team TJRS member or if you are a reader, please make sure you stick around after the show so that we can do our Insiders Live or our members only live. That's going to happen after the show. I do want to note one more amazing sponsor, and this is one of our favorites. To all the girls I've loved before. The Joy Reid Show is brought to you tonight by Willie's Remedy. Now listen, are you tired of waking up hungover and worrying about what happened last night? I know you are. Now you can have fun and relax without any of the regrets with Willie's THC infused social tonic. Willie's is a premium THC infused social tonic crafted by the legendary Willie Nelson. It's inspired by Willie's way of living, where peace flows freely and hangovers are a thing of the past. For anybody that's trying to be more intentional this year, Willie's gives you that special social uplifting buzz without breaking your goals. Why? Because it's low calorie, a low sugar alcohol alternative that actually works, delivering a fast acting euphoric social buzz without the regrets that come with alcohol. If you're kicking off the new year with fewer hangovers, this is the way to upgrade your resolutions with something that you can actually look forward to. For example, Willie's would be great for like unwinding after a long day, socializing without alcohol, getting creative, etc. And that's one of the reasons that we love it. Replacing alcohol on weekdays could be a good way to do it, on weekend wind downs, the creative sessions, and more. Willie's Social Tonics come in 5 milligram and 10 milligram doses with a best-in-class flavor experience, so smooth and balanced, you will barely realize that you're drinking a THC product at all. You can enjoy the tonics as a shot or sipped over ice or mixed into your favorite mocktail. Willie's is not that like weird, feared edible that you ate too much of in college or when you were on the group trip with the girlfriends or guy friends. Each bottle of Willie's is third-party lab tested for accurate dosage so you can trust and customize your experience. And the unique blend of THC, CBD, CBG, and L-theanine delivers a feeling of calm, euphoria, and relaxation. One shot of Willie's helps you relax, unwind, and de-stress. So if you want to try it, get there quick. Willie's has sold out 3 times in the first 6 months with over 50,000 happy customers, and they just now restocked. Willie's ships directly to your doorstep in 40 plus states. You can order now at drinkwillies.com. And if you use the code JOY, you get 20% off your first order plus free shipping on orders over $95. And you can enjoy life in the high country. Okay, let's get back to the show in chief. Now, you guys remember the guy, Russ Vought, the Project 2025 author who got by some clandestine documentary filmmakers spilling the tea and the plan in a sort of Scooby-Doo villain style back in 2024? Take a listen.
Rehabilitate Christian nationalism, you have the largest deportation in history, block funding for Planned Parenthood. I want to be the person that crushes the deep state.
Crushes the deep state, and we want to make Christian nationalism great again. Well, the White House, they even made like a Fear the Reaper meme video about him. We're going to put it up without the sound because obviously the guys who made the song Fear the Reaper actually objected to the White House using their music to do this. So this was this weird meme. We're talking about memes today where they called Russ Vought the Reaper because he was going to come in and slash the government. Here he is walking up with a scythe. I don't know why they think this demonic imagery is hot. They think this is the hotness to do this demonic imagery, but that's what they did. So that's him. He was on Capitol Hill on tax day, the 15th, which was Wednesday. And I just want you guys to take 3 minutes to listen to how that went.
Is the total dollar amount requested for defense spending in FY27, including annual appropriations and reconciliation funds?
1.5 trillion, Senator.
So $1.5 trillion. What is the total dollar amount requested for non-defense spending?
$660 billion.
Okay, and what is the overall cut to non-defense programs that you're
10%.
And have you included, Director Vought, estimates or a fund for the war in Iran in the budget you presented to Congress?
No, sir.
Would I be in the ballpark to say we've already spent at least $50 billion?
I wouldn't want to make a characterization of that at this point.
The president recently said, I mean, he was talking about the record increase in gas prices thanks to him and his war of choice in Iran. He said, and I quote, "The United States can't take care of daycare. That has to be up to a state." He then added, Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things, They can do it on a state basis. You can't do it on federal. So I'm just curious, from your perspective at OMB, have you taken any actions to turn Medicare back to the states?
No, and the president doesn't want to do that with regard to these
Well, he
important
said it.
federal programs.
I mean, he
He's
said it.
referring to,
So you're disagreeing with what the president said?
no, I'm saying that the president meant is he's talking about fraud in these programs. He's
That's
talking
not, he
about-
didn't mention, excuse me, reclaim my time. Nowhere, I have the full statement in front of me. Nowhere in front of me is the word fraud presented. What he was talking about, he later at a different part said, we have to pay more for wars. And looking at the budget proposal, this is why I raise it, $442 billion increase in defense. That's what you're asking for, about a 42% increase, is that right?
Correct. For many paradigm-shifting investments that we need this.
A 42% increase on what was already a record high for defense. And at the same time, cut Medicaid, Medicare, not pay for childcare. All of these things that the American people need, in the case of Medicare, have paid into.
You've sacked 350,000 people. Do you know what percentage are veterans?
Senator, we have ensured that all of the veteran preferences are stuck to.
30% of the federal workforce is veterans. So when you fire 350,000 people, I think you have fired more veterans than any administration in the history of the United States. I yield back.
And the tax cuts you provided to the wealthiest were permanent, right?
Yes.
They were. But the tax cuts that were aimed at sort of working people, like no tax on tips, those will expire at the end of 2028, right?
Well, we will be working to extend those.
But you didn't make them permanent in that bill, did you?
We were not able to because of the reconciliation and cost allocations that we were given.
Right, because you didn't want to have to pay for them.
Do you know, Mr. Vought, how many of the largest corporations in America paid absolutely nothing in federal income tax in 2025?
Not off the top of my head, but our view is that the tax policy.
Well, let me just tell you, Mr. Vought, reclaiming my time, let me just tell you the number of corporations, large corporations, that paid absolutely zero in federal tax was 88 at least that we know of, including Tesla, which paid zero on almost $5.7 billion of income, as well as Coinbase, Citigroup, CVS Health, and Palantir.
So the guy who wrote much of Project 2025, one of the authors of it, many of them now work in the government, who is once again, as he was at the first Trump administration, the head of the Office of Management and Budget, Russ Vought, whose job it is to write the budget, says they want $1.5 trillion for the military. They want to cut 10% out of every program that actually helps Americans. And they want another $200 to $400 million for this illegal war in Iran. So literally money for war, but can't feed the poor. Literally. He was also asked by another member what he would say to the families of the 100,000 estimated people who died because of the slashing of USAID. And he said he just doesn't believe Harvard's study. Meanwhile, in America's blue cities, so that's what's happening on the federal side. So I just wanted you to take that in. Meanwhile, what's happening in these blue cities is a very, very different thing. I want to show you all what's happening here. I'm in New York City right now. That was the tax day testimony of the Office of Management and Budget head, Russ Vought. Now I want you to watch what Zohran Mamdani, mayor of New York City, posted on his socials on tax day.
For mayor, I said I was going to tax the rich. Well, today, we're taxing the rich. I'm thrilled to announce we've secured a pied-à-terre tax, the first in New York's history. This is an annual fee on luxury properties worth more than $5 million, whose owners do not live full-time in the city. Like for this penthouse, which hedge fund CEO Ken Griffin bought for $238 million. This pied-à-terre tax is specifically designed for the richest of the rich, those who store their wealth in New York City real estate, but who don't actually live here. But even so, they're able to reap the huge financial rewards of owning property in, dare I say, the greatest city in the world. And most of the time, these units are sitting empty, since again, they don't actually live here. This is a fundamentally unfair system that hurts working New Yorkers. Now, it's coming to an end. This tax will raise at least $500 million directly for the city. It'll help fund things like free childcare, cleaner streets, and safer neighborhoods. As mayor, I believe everyone has a role to play in contributing to our city, and some a little bit more than others. Happy Tax Day, New York.
So it turns out it is possible to govern for the people. Weird, right? Meanwhile, in the great city of Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson's veto of a bill that would have halted, just to get this, there was a veto of a bill that would have frozen pay increases to tipped workers. His veto survived, clearing the way for Chicago's tipped workers to get an $8 pay increase, $8 an hour pay increase at restaurants, who will now be required to raise their salaries to match the city's minimum wage starting in July, and provide an annual cost of living increase every July going forward. Now, the city council had tried to freeze this 2023 law that passed that was supposed to eliminate the so-called sub-minimum wage. That was a literal thing that existed in Chicago, that you could pay people that was less than the regular minimum wage. It was called the sub-minimum wage because people get tips. Well, that was abolished. And so the tips were supposed to be, the wages were supposed to all go to the city's minimum wage. The current city council passed a law to freeze that, to stop that from happening, from being implemented. The mayor vetoed it. His veto has survived. So now people are going to literally get a raise. Watch the mayor. I want you guys to watch Mayor Brandon Johnson have to defend allowing Chicago workers who work for tips to not have to work for sub-minimum wage. Take a listen.
Small restaurant owners in Black and brown neighborhoods, especially, who are really struggling and can't afford to stay open because of this.
I reject the notion of pitting small Black-owned business owners, as you described, against Black and brown women who are making $12 an hour. They are not causing a disruption to our economy. We have seen more people applying for business license than we've ever seen in the city of Chicago. What did Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton run on? What was it, $25 an hour? We're talking about $12.73. Which is it? Does the party believe in $25 an hour, or does the party believe in $12.73? And let's pause that. Got to figure out who we want to be. I know who I am. I'm the mayor that's going to ensure that we have the most pro-worker city in America. Again, a $1.25 billion bond investment, over $600 million devoted to small businesses. That is the largest investment in the history of Chicago for small businesses. And yes, we passed paid time off. Yes, we've abolished the sub-minimum wage that has its vestiges tied to slavery. And Black and brown women being forced to make ends meet off of less than $35,000 a year. That's an injustice.
Have you ever tried to live on $12.73 an hour? Who can live in Chicago, one of the most expensive cities in the country, on $12.73 an hour? He's literally like, are y'all really over here stressing me over letting people just make $12.73 an hour when really the goal was supposed to be $25 an hour? What if you are feeding a family and they're saying $12.73 an hour is too much? What? They're saying that's too much. And then trying to pit the Black businesses against the workers, trying to throw Black businesses, saying, but the Black businesses can't afford it. What? Y'all literally tried to go there with the Black mayor of Chicago and say, it's the Black businesses why we cannot raise people's wages, to throw Black people under the bus to try to make him explain himself for getting rid of something called the sub-minimum wage. What normal modern country has something called a sub-minimum wage? What is that? Nobody can live. Literally, the $12.73 is like the bare minimum to survive in Chicago. And he's like, can we just get that? How much for one rib? So who said that? How much for one rib? Somebody in the chat just came with the line. He said, how much for one rib? It's a joy. I can go to a barbecue restaurant and I say, want some ribs? How much for one rib? That's exactly some how much for one rib money. And he's like, can we just get the how much for one rib wage before we get to the 25? Can you get us to 12? And he's having to explain himself to a journalist who's like, but what about the Black businesses? Are you serious? Anyway, meanwhile, in the great state of Texas, I'm sorry, I used to make $15,000 a year when I lived in New York. I actually could afford to live in New York on $15,000 a year. Okay, that's how much inflation has destroyed this country. $15,000 a year, no roommate. Moving on, $450 a month rent. I'm an old person. These are the things that I reminisce about. Meanwhile, in Texas, a big win for small women and minority-owned businesses. Speaking of that, as a judge ruled that no. In fact, the state of Texas cannot repurpose money passed by the legislature to help small minority and women-owned businesses and turn it into a slush fund for businesses owned by white conservative men. can't believe this country. Reading from the Associated Press, quote, an Austin district judge on Monday ordered the state's historically underutilized business program rules to be temporarily reinstated, meaning women and minority-owned business owners can qualify for the state's hub program again for now. 4 business owners and a trade association sued the state of Texas and acting comptroller Kelly Hancock on March 2nd over the agency's emergency rules that removed women and minorities from the hub program and stripped their businesses of hub certifications. The judge ordered the reinstatement of 6 businesses that sued the comptroller's office over the emergency rules. 2 had joined after the lawsuit was first filed, and further direct state agencies to inform hub businesses that have been decertified since December of the court ruling. The hub program was created back in the 90s through bipartisan legislation to give minority and women-owned businesses a leg up when seeking state contracts. The program does not set quotas for the number of hub-certified businesses, but it sets goals that state agencies generally strive to meet. The comptroller had changed the criteria for who could qualify. Remember, we had the head of the Business Roundtable on with us to talk about this. The agency that sued, Alfonso David, came on to say they changed the rules, and they're like, well, now the hub program applies to senior citizen veterans, and they made the criteria so specific that it would only apply to white men. You cannot make this stuff up. Meanwhile, more good news. We are clocking our wins here on the Joy Reid Show. As was mentioned earlier by Oliver, Analelia Mejia, who was on this very show talking about her run to replace Mikey Sherrill, who now is the governor, she won. So there you go. She won the seat in Congress. She will now replace Mikey Sherrill. And that everyone is how you win. Joining us now is somebody who is seeking to join. We're gonna wait. Okay, we're gonna have our guest in a moment. But what we want to say about this is that I think this is proof that we are seeing a sea change in the thinking of voters about what effective government looks like. And I do want to say this to you. This is very important to note, because the vast majority of wealth in this country is actually created by the government. I want to say this very clearly. It's created by government contracts. The majority of millionaires are created by securing government contracts. I'm going to play 2 quick sound bites. Jason, can we play C10? Howard Lutnick, the guy from the Epstein files, who took his family to Epstein Island on a family vacay. He was recently giving a talk in which he talked about the thing that irritates him most and that he finds the most unpleasant about government. Jason, this is C10, if we could play it, please.
The thing I learned when I went into government is the sucking sound of how many people try to suck off of the U.S. government. I mean, it's so demoralizing to watch that stuff. Look.
So he
said the worst thing I learned when I went into government.
So he said the giant sucking sound of people wanting to eat off the government. That is what irritates Howard Lutnick most, not people trafficking children for sexual abuse. Howard Lutnick, whose empire and real estate empire is made possible in part by getting massive tax rebates and tax abatements from his real estate empire. But he is saying, and he also ran an investment firm, Howard Lutnick, right? He had the firm in the World Trade Center. I believe that was his business, a finance business. These businesses all make tons of money through the public largesse. But here's somebody even worse. Let me play Rick Scott, who is even worse, because his argument about the giant sucking sound that irritates him the most when it comes to government is an actual even worse story. Here is C11. This is Rick Scott.
Doing is great for Florida. It's horrible for the people in New York. I mean, now he's going to open up a grocery store. I used to work in grocery stores. Is the government going to run a grocery store? What does the government run well? I can't think of anything the government runs well. All government does is mess up your life.
He said, I can't think anything that the government runs well. All the government do is mess up your life. Except that Rick Scott, who he says used to work in a grocery store, that's true. He was not born rich. But how Rick Scott became rich, and he is filthy rich, so rich that he financed both of his runs for governor and his Senate campaign out of his own pocket. He actually didn't have to fundraise. That's how rich he is in one of the most expensive states to run for office in the country. as one of the least popular governors in the country. He ran successfully for Senate, mainly through a self-financed campaign. Do you know how Rick Scott became rich? The government. Rick Scott used to run a healthcare company whose main income came from Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE. So they would get giant reimbursements from the federal and state governments for patients. That is how Rick Scott got rich. And while being the CEO of a company whose literal basis in income was based on the government and in reaping money off of Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE, which is the military version of Medicare, Rick Scott's company defrauded the government. They would submit false claims to Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE for patients they never saw. They would have phantom patients who were filing Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE health claims to the tune of about $1.7 billion. It was the largest fraud in the history of the healthcare system in the United States. Rick Scott was the CEO of the company, very well paid, 7-figure salary. And he testified in the case and said under oath that he had no idea that the company he was literally the CEO of was defrauding the healthcare system, meaning the government. Rick Scott said he knew nothing about it. He had no idea that this record Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE fraud, defrauding the veterans' healthcare. That is why Rick Scott is rich. When Rick Scott then becomes governor of Florida, what did Rick Scott do? He ordered all federal workers to submit to drug testing. And you know who owned the company, the clinics where people would go and get drug tests? Rick Scott and his wife. So he owned healthcare companies where people could go in and get their drug tests. And he also ordered drug testing, and at least he attempted to. The workers, of course, sued, and there was a big lawsuit, and it never actually happened. But that was the plan. Rick Scott has mined the government at the state and federal level his entire adult life to become, I'm fairly sure he's at least close to a billionaire. If he's not a billionaire, he's pretty close to it. And we live in a country right now where the billionaires who run our country, who picked J.D. Vance, who are profiting from AI surveillance, who are profiting from the war in Iran, most of their wealth comes from the government. Peter Thiel, who created J.D. Vance, built him from scratch from a nobody at Yale, who suddenly writes a book about his Appalachian roots when he's really not even poor, never was poor, was a middle-class Ohioan who lived for a little while with his grandmother and then pretended that Meemaw was all that he had in the world, writes this book while he's at Yale, the big CIA recruitment shop, comes out, meets up with Peter Thiel, who is a Nepo baby South African who comes to this country, rockets to the top because he invests in a company called Palantir. What is Palantir's business? The federal government. Palantir was literally created with CIA investment money. The CIA had an investment firm that it created outside of its reaches because it's technically illegal for the CIA to operate in the United States. So Palantir absorbs the technology that PayPal initially created. And PayPal's initial investors include Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. The South Africans come over here. The South Africans, that's why they call them the PayPal Mafia. They all invest in PayPal. They get lucky. It becomes popular. But the same technology that PayPal uses to track your purchases, they fold that into a bigger surveillance system that the CIA invests in to flip PayPal technology to use those same systems that are used to make sure your payments are not fraud. They flip that into a company called Palantir, which after the 9/11 attacks suddenly becomes uber profitable with one client, the federal government. And Palantir, their entire business is government contracts to provide technology to ICE, government contracts to provide war technology to the Department of Defense, government technology to create the kind of bombs that can wipe out Gaza. That's their business, the federal government. What about Elon Musk? They're like, well, his business is Twitter. No, it isn't. He bought Twitter because he had investments in PayPal Palantir. He then has a rocket company that he recently told his shareholders is what he really wants to spend his time on. He would like to do minimal hours at his real company, Tesla, which is his main business that he bought from two real creators. He just purchased it with his PayPal money. And he said all he wants to do is build rocket ships. Well, why does he want to build rocket ships all day? Not because he cares about rockets, but because he gets federal contracts. The rocket company's main client is the Defense Department. Tesla's sales last year were fake inflated because the Tesla truck was being purchased by governments, and that fake inflated its increased sales. Once again, the federal government reaching in to save a billionaire's business that wouldn't have been otherwise profitable. Sam Altman, Mr. OpenAI, Mr. I'm going to make good technology. What if his OpenAI systems, much like these similar products, are being used for? They're being used by the federal government. They're being used by the CIA. They're being used by the FBI. They're being used by ICE. They're being used by Border Patrol. Each and every one of these companies is doing what Howard Lutnick is accusing ordinary people of doing, sucking off the federal government. But because they suck off the federal government to get government contracts, that's good. That's a good way of being a good civic American. Growing your wealth through federal contracts is good when they do it. But when a small business in Texas just tries to get a little state contract, that's bad. And they're trying to suck off the federal government. And you have to end that program because those Black and brown and Asian American and LGBTQ and women-owned businesses are just greedy and trying to suck off the federal government. And they're probably committing fraud. Give it to the white conservative Christian men. This is a sick system that is attempting to reward people who literally spend their entire lives eating off the government. And then not only do they eat off the government, they then pick the politicians who then give them the government contracts. Why do you think J.D. Vance goes from a literal nobody to becoming vice president of the United States? Peter Thiel. Without Peter Thiel, you never would have heard of J.D. Vance. He would have been an anonymous guy married to a very prominent Indian family, and no one would care about him. Now, suddenly he's ensconced in Turning Point USA, though no one showed up to watch him talk. Suddenly he's on track to be the next president of the United States. If he's president, what do you think he's going to do with the office? He will run the Pentagon, which has now been renamed the Department of War for a very important reason. Defense, somewhat profitable. War, really profitable. So all of a sudden, Peter Thiel gets to pick the next president, who gets to pick the next Defense Department head, who then gets to decide who gets the contracts. Who do you think is going to get the contracts? Peter Thiel. Who do you think is going to get all of the surveillance contracts? His buddies at Palantir. Who do you think is going to get the rocket contracts? Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. It's all a big, hate to say this for the Saints on, circle jerk. These guys pick the politicians who then pick the contracts and hand it over to their friends. This small group of oligarchs is running the country, owning the politicians. And then they have organizations like AIPAC that make sure that the politicians stay on board with the most warlike country on earth, a country that's literally been at war since it was founded and keeps on going into wars and claiming we got attacked. But then when you look into it, they keep invading their neighbors. And every time they invade their neighbors, they're in another war. But how convenient is that whenever they're in another war, they have to come back for more money and more munitions. And every time they come back for more money and more munitions, our defense contractors get paid. Every time they drop bombs on Gaza, they come back and buy more bombs, which makes our defense contractors get paid. This is literally what Eisenhower was saying about the military-industrial complex. We literally live in a country where all they're doing is siphoning money and handing it to each other, and then picking politicians who will hand them more money, and then complaining that you, ordinary American, are greedy and you're not self-sufficient and you just want to eat off the government teat. You just want health care and you just want free health care and you want free preschool and you want all these things that don't even really cost that much money, but you're greedy for wanting them. But they want a lot more than that. They want billion and trillion dollar contracts. They want to become trillionaires. And they're going to do it not based on selling things to the consumer, but based on government contracts. So every time they complain that people are sucking the teeth of the government, tell them to look in the mirror because they're the ones getting rich off the government. Literally. and then saying that you're the one who's doing it. Elon Musk did a tweet today, I think it was, where he said that the future is that there should be unlimited basic income, universal basic income, which a lot of people on the AI right are into, because that is the way that we will mitigate the elimination of American jobs. And that the way to deal with that is to make sure everybody just gets a check. And people started responding to him on X Twitter saying, yeah, but what are people supposed to do all day? Did you all see Wall-E? Do you remember the movie Wall-E? In the movie Wall-E, you've had complete despoilment of the environment because these AI type billionaires like the ones who are running our country, destroy the country. They've used up all the timber. They've destroyed all the national parks. They've turned the place into a despoiled, rotten, monstrous earth that is now dying. And so the humans now live in space on a space station where they don't work. And the robots do all the work. This is the vision that Elon Musk proposed today, that we just give up having careers. We give up having any sort of a function as human beings. We just let the AI robots do all the work. And then I guess we become what the humans were in Wall-E, just a bunch of fluffed out, no muscle tone, can barely move, living in like a wheelie because they can't even walk, because they don't walk. They don't do anything but sit around all day staring at entertainment. And I think they think that's enough for us because they do think we're cattle. The people who are running this country think of us as nothing more than chattel. But what they do want you to do with this universal basic income is continue to spend money, to continue to give OpenAI and ChatGPT your money. Because while you're sitting around with no career, no prospects, no purpose in life, you've lost your purpose. They want to replace that purpose with something else. And this is why you should understand why they keep talking religion. They are trying to take away our purpose as human beings, our ability to pay for our own rent, pay for our own mortgages, own a piece of property, have a vacation, afford some health care, afford to go to the dentist. They want to take all of that dignity away and replace it with a check where you sit around and do nothing but sit in front of a screen and spend. And as long as you sit around and reverse that money that they're going to give you from the federal government back to them and buy stuff, and just mindlessly consume, and then also mindlessly consume this fake religion they're giving you that tells you that greed is good, that the rich are good, that the poor are the ones who are evil, that the billionaires are your betters, that you should worship Donald Trump, that he is closest thing there is. Troy Nell said he's as close to the second coming as we're going to get. They want you to believe that, because then you won't mind that they're stealing everything that moves, taking everything that should be yours, and turning you into nothing more than effectively a cow. How dare Howard Lutnick say anything about the American people when he's so far all up in the Epstein files, the FBI should be investigating him? But they won't. Because why would they? He's one of them. He's in the Epstein class. I'm telling y'all, this is, I say this all the time. I say it all the time. It's not a bunch of stories. It's just one story. It's just one story. It's always one, and it's always the same story. The super rich have always wanted only one thing: to be kings. They've always envied the king. They envied the king of England. They envied the king of Spain. They envied the king of Habsburgs and, everywhere in Austria. They've always envied that position of being a royal entity with everyone beneath them. It's the reason, as Michael Harriot points out, that slave owners demanded that the enslaved call them master and mistress, because they were trying to emulate the lords and ladies of the royal houses of Britain. They want to be kings, and they want everyone else to be serfs. They don't want anyone to have free will. They don't want anyone to have education. They don't want anyone to have knowledge. They just want you to serve them and be a servile, faithful, fake Christian who doesn't even know what's in the Bible, like Pete Hegseth, so they can use and abuse you. And then say you're the one who's lazy. You're the one who's sucking off the government teat. You're the one who's bad. You're the one who's wrong. And they're the ones who are good. It's disgusting. And I hope that we know enough about this and get up on it enough by November to replace each and every person who's letting this happen to us. And I don't mean just letting it happen to people on our side, because they are letting it happen to the right too. They just haven't figured it out yet. At some point, they're going to get it. Pete Hegseth came this close. They came this close. Ezekiel was trying to tell Israel at the time, which, by the way, is not the current state of Israel. It's a completely different historical entity. That he was trying to tell them that your faithlessness and allowing violence and allowing poverty and allowing want and allowing people to go hungry in your midst is evil, and that your temple is going to be destroyed, and that God will look the other way when it happens because you are abusing the vulnerable. That's why he saw the wheel. You're going to get it, Pete Hegseth, if you actually read the Bible and don't just watch Pulp Fiction, although Pulp Fiction is an excellent movie and you should absolutely watch it. Okay. Sorry that I had to go on that rant. I had to get that out of my system. We do have a guest coming up. I want to show you guys, sorry. Okay, I'm moving on. There is this new art installation that is opening right here in New York City. Let you check out this video. Take a look. Oh, D1. Sorry, D1.
And I thought it was me as a doctor.
This is the Holy Babel, a 5-year art project capturing Trumpism as a cult. One built by co-opting Christianity. 250 pages of scripture documenting his life in biblical prose inside a chapel installation, with a limited number of the religious texts available for collectors through a vending machine, complete with stained glass windows and prayer player cards. Previews open on April 17th in New York City. Click the link in bio to reserve your entry.
That looks fascinating. Joining me now is the man behind that artistic moment, The Suited Racer. He's a New York-based conceptual artist whose work examines how belief systems are constructed, circulated, and normalized within contemporary culture, working across installation, text, and visual storytelling. He explores the intersection of media, mythology, and power, refocusing on how repetition and narrative shape what societies accept as truth. The Suited Racer, well, hello there.
Hi, Joy. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
So, first of all, please continue.
No, I was just going to say thank you for having me. I admire all of your bravery. You know, it's phenomenal to watch you from a distance.
Thank you very much. So first, explain this look, explain who you are and why you are.
In 2015, when Trump was running for president for the first time, and no one thought that he could win, I just had this idea of like, what if he did win? And what would that world look like in 20 years? So I created this fictional character living in the real world. And I created a comic book story 20 years into the future where we were under this authoritarian rule. And so many of the things that were in that story have become real already. And about 5 years ago, I decided to start writing this into what became the Holy Babel. Because what Trumpism has done really well, and we've never seen anything like this before, is co-opt Christianity and turn it into something new. It's not a political party. It's not a religious party. It's something that we frankly have never seen because we've never had something like social media deliver this message so broadly, so fastly, and organized so strongly.
What's amazing about that statement is that, as you said, so much of this was predictable, right? I think you and I were probably predicting the same thing at the same time. And we were trying to say this man is a fascist. He was showing fascist tendencies as early as, really the mid 90s. We could see kind of the sort of growing of it. But talk a little bit more, say more about this. And your installation does get into this twisting of Christianity. We started off the show talking about Pete Hegseth accidentally quoting Pulp Fiction because he doesn't know what's really in the Bible. But they have created a different religion. MAGA Christianity is not Christianity. It seems like it's anti-Christianity, and it's almost a mockery of Christianity. So how do you do a send up of a mockery?
Well, you said something very key, and you said it's anti-Christianity. What you have to, first of all, I want to say one thing, and it's that we can discuss people and events as much as we want. We can talk about Donald Trump to no end, and we can talk about the things that he does. But in reality, it's an idea thing. We should be discussing ideas, and he just has bad ideas for the country. And the way that he frames everything that he pursues things they're just the incorrect way of doing these things. So I want to say that first.
Mm-hmm.
When you start understanding the ideology behind him, which again is a bad idea, it's the anti-golden rule. The golden rule, which is the most important thing, is love your God above everything else and treat your neighbors as you would yourself. Unfortunately, Donald Trump calls what I call the fool's golden rule, like, fool's gold, in the sense that he treats others as how he would not accept to be treated himself. So it is the quite literal opposite of that expression, which is the most important of commandments in the Bible. So when you start from that point of view, everything else is just presents itself, right? And you said this is very predictable. You're right. I have a book in the Holy Babel. It's a series of books. One of them is the story of Donald Trump, completely documented and written in biblical prose, as well as his genealogy. But then we have his first term, then Biden's term, which is called Elders, and his term is called First of Rulers. And then there's the Book of Predictables. It's called the Book of Predictables because I couldn't call it the obvious thing that's going to happen. It had to be called the Book of Predictables. And in this book, which was written before he even took terms, all of these things that are happening right now were already in there. The masked agents getting everybody who's an immigrant, attacking and dividing and all these things, they're all a part of it. So it's wild. And I think the idea is biblical prose is something that millions of Americans are familiar with. People go to church on Sundays, they pray every day, they read their Bible. But when you read what he says, even currently, I'm not just talking about 20 years ago, it's shocking. It's not meant to be, right? So something along the lines of what he said to Billy Bush back in the day, when you're famous, you can just do whatever you want. In the Holy Babel, it says it as follows, which is, when thou art anointed with fame, everything is permissible. You may grab them by their secret flesh, their whispering eye, right? So it's just cringy. It's meant to create disturbance when you're reading it.
So that is fascinating. And you talked a little bit about what people will see in this installation. I'm excited. I'm going to try to, I want to attend this. I want to see it for myself. Talk about what people will experience as they go through the installation.
So, I mean, it is a real chapel by every single extent. It feels that way, and that was the idea, right? And the craziest part is that, I mean, I've been working on this specific art project for 5 years, and on Monday or Sunday, he goes and he puts that picture of himself as Jesus. And I'm thinking, like, we're about to release this right now. People are going to think I put this together in 3 days, But the church pews are real pews from a church that have been reclaimed and resized and everything. I have all these beautiful handmade stained glass windows. So I really want you to feel that this is the moment that we're in. You may not think that this is happening because there's no physical representation of it, but it may as well exist in every town, because this is what it looks like right now. And I'm just showing you what you witness digitally through social media. I'm bringing it to you in real life so that you really understand where the minds of people are at. I've seen people pray to Donald Trump. It's very uneasy. It's very disturbing.
Very disturbing. And I, as somebody who grew up in the church, it's one of the most sort of horrifying things I'm seeing, because these are people who cannot understand the Bible, because literally they're doing what Moses came and condemned in the Old Testament, praying to a golden calf, literally. I want to talk about you just a little bit. Oh, please go on. Did you have a comment?
No. I was just going to say, at the end of the day, I've gotten some comments about being sacrilegious. I'm just flipping tables. And anybody who reads the Bible knows exactly what I mean with that. I'm just flipping tables. That's all I'm doing. So, I want to say that. I want to state that.
Absolutely. And what you're doing and what you are exposing, that is the biblical work, right? The work is to expose those who are charlatans in the faith and falsifying the faith and demeaning and lying about the faith by saying it's the opposite of what they say it is, right? They're saying that, hate is good, that empathy is bad. Like they're saying things that are so obviously anti-Christ that it's shocking that people believe it. But I want to talk a little bit about you, because your whole appearance, when I got the picture, we got this pitch about this installation that you're doing, I was like, okay, this is unusual. This artist is really taking, you're doing a physical presentation as an artist. You are part of the art. Talk about how you became this person and what does it mean? What does your physical appearance mean?
So as I stated before, when I thought of this world, I thought, how do I want to tell the story of this country and what we're going to become? What does that look like? And in the story, the GOP isn't called the GOP anymore because it would have changed, and it's called the Neo-Nationalist Freedom Party. At the time, nationalism sounded like a crazy word to use, but now it's so normal. So in that future, I thought, how could someone want to protest? How could someone exist in that place and be able to express themselves? And where dystopian stories always go with complete control, I went with a flood of misinformation. So it's not that they're controlling our information, it's that they're flooding us with a bunch of things that aren't facts, that aren't, just not a reflection of reality. And so I took on this persona, and the reason I wear this mask is because in that future, AI has facial recognition anywhere you walk, so you can be tracked on a dime. And the idea behind this was to say, you can't track me with your AI, but AI didn't exist back then, and now if you travel internationally and you come back through immigration, there's just a facial recognition software. It's not even, they don't even look at your passport anymore. So yeah. We have never been more vulnerable because we have never had technology quite as strong as it is. It's like a combination of all of the wrong things, just serendipitously getting together and creating this reality and making it worse every single day. So that's why I wear all this stuff. I kept it anonymous because honestly, it's not about who I am. I'm just someone who had to do something. And that's all I want to communicate to everybody. It seems hopeless. It seems like, what am I going to do? Everybody can do something. And that's, we just have to stop pretending like we are powerless. The Constitution is not really a document about our rights. It's a document about what the government cannot do. If you read it, it is literally a restraint on the government. It's really not telling us what to do. It's telling them what they cannot. So we have to, really reclaim this power that we have as Americans.
Has anyone ever told you, I mean, you're giving your artistic presentation, which I find fascinating, is giving real world superhero and Anonymous, the people from Anonymous, right? Who kind of do the same thing because they're saying any of us are anonymous. Any of us could be that. Has anyone ever told? I mean, are you giving superhero? Is that part of the idea here? Are you Spider-Man?
So in the book, my persona is that, but it's someone who's doing it through art and through messaging. And I got close twice into turning it into a scripted TV show because I was hoping we would end up with one term. And then, things happened. COVID happened, actually. We were really far along, and then it didn't happen. But yes, the idea is that I am this hero character, and I'm just trying to get the truth out. I'm very inspired by the work of Alan Moore, who wrote Watchmen and V for Vendetta. Yes. And of course, all of Orwell's work, but the difference is that the future has gone in a different direction. Like I said, they're not controlling what we watch. They're just flooding it, and I have friends who are journalists, and we would sit down at dinner tables and they would say, the truth, we do so much work to find the truth. And it hit me one day. The truth is just another story when it's out there. We think that the people that look for the truth, believe the truth has more weight. But as soon as it goes on social media, it's just one of 40 things that people are saying about the thing. And there's no way to communicate that either.
I find this really fascinating. And I think about the fact that if I were in a superhero universe, this would literally be happening on the news, right? When people watch, Batman or Spider-Man and someone's talking to Spider-Man or Superman on the news, right? And it's I'm doing that in real life. Talk about where people, if they want to see this installation, Where can they see it? How can they get more information online? Lots of people are very fascinated with it in the chat. So where can we get more information if we want to come see the show?
Absolutely. So you can go to theholybabel.com. And of course, Babel is because, you know, he tends to babble. So it's theholybabel.com/NYC. It will take you to the place where you can see the dates to come and visit it. The address is 279 Broome Street. It's in the Lower East Side, which is very appropriate. And we will be opening it to the general public starting on Wednesday next week, and it'll run through May 2nd. Everything here is for sale because if this was Donald Trump's real church, everything would be for sale. And the way that you buy the religious book is through the vending machine. So you can just walk up there with your Apple Pay, you tap it, and then it just comes out. They're all signed and numbered. They're all $45.47. And there's only 4,547 of them.
That, you know, I have to tell you, my friend, this is a good reason to wear a mask. It is the opposite of what ICE is doing, using masks to intimidate and frighten people. You're doing it Superman style or superhero style, and I'm here for it. I'm an art lover. I think this is fascinating. Cannot wait to see the show. If you are in Gotham City, of course he's in Gotham City. I mean, where else would he be? He's in Gotham. He's in New York. Folk in the chat asking, I'm like, it's of course New York City. That's where all the things happen. The Suited Racer. So fascinating. Thank you for lending art to the resistance. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Joy. And thank you for your bravery.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Listen, y'all can never tell us that we don't bring you something different up on this show. We're going to bring you a super. Think about it. If you guys were in a superhero universe and Spider-Man was going to give a statement to the news, you would watch that and think, that seems normal. Spider-Man's talking to the news, right? But now we are literally almost living in a cartoon. We are almost living in the Watchmen series. We are living in such a strange universe that I would not be surprised if people started really doing the superhero thing, because we're almost at the point where we need Batman, y'all. The greatest, my favorite superhero, of course, is Batman. Sorry, DC Comics is the best. I'm sorry, they don't make the better movies. Marvel has better movies, but DC has the better characters. Sorry. But that's what I'm trying to get you all to. You have to expand your mind and think about other things. And if we're living in a universe that's this wild, y'all, we may as well go ahead and let it get wild. We might as well take a step outside of our comfort zone, and having a conversation with a masked superhero seems totally normal to me at this point. That's how crazy it's gotten, right? Thank you all for tuning in. Let's do our moment of joy. My moment of joy is a lot of fun. And this one is not about New York City. I know I've done a lot of New York City talk, but I did something so fun this week. I'm in New York because yesterday I did something. Yes, DC Comics is the best. We do love Marvel too, okay? I just personally like the characters in DC. I was a comic book kid growing up, and I personally, right, people like, if Kanye can do it, but we don't really mention Kanye anymore. We gave him away in the trade. We sent him over with Nicki in the trade. So we don't really talk about Kanye anymore. He wanted to go over with them. He's with MAGA now. He's with them. Chili, all of them. They're over there. I did something so fun yesterday. Let me say this. When I say this line in the chat, you tell me who I'm talking about. You are not the father. You are not the father. Come on. Maury Povich! You guys, I actually got to go on Maury Povich's podcast. Everybody got podcasts now, y'all. Katie Couric got a podcast. All of the like legends of TV news have podcasts now. Yeah, this is Connie Chung's husband, y'all. Went on his podcast. This is going to drop on Monday. We're going to put the link out. I'm going to make sure we do lots of social media so you know it. I'm going to let you all know and warn you, we did maybe do a TikTok dance together. I've not been able to get Jason to do a TikTok dance with me, but Maury did one. They asked me to do it. So we did a TikTok dance. It's going to be so much fun. I hope you guys will watch it. Connie was not there. I still need to meet Connie Chung. But let me guys tell you how small the world is. It turns out that one of the people that I most adored back in my days at the artist formerly known as MSNBC literally is his niece. is Maury Povich's niece. And somehow I never made that connection, even though her last name is all the way Povich. It just went all these years. And so when I finally got to meet him, I'm like, we're practically family. I literally worked with his niece and absolutely adored her. She's an incredible person. And we're going to now try to meet up next time I'm in New York City so that we can have, drinks or lunch or something like that. Amazing. Izzy is his niece. She's awesome. One of the greatest in the media biz. So yes, I got to be on Maury Povich. We did talk about Connie doing the after the interview, Connie doing the famous piano thing. I mean, chef's kiss. Classic. So my moment of joy is that I got to meet Maury Povich. So I am your moment of joy on tonight. If you guys are members, please make sure that you don't go too far away because we are going to be doing our members only live. And please make sure that you screenshot these glasses. I need you guys to help me pick one of these pairs and tell me which one you like the best. You can like them all, but we want to make sure that you tell us which one you like the best. So it's like ranked choice voting. We want to know what you guys like because we are making these readers. And by the way, this is one of those things that came from the chats. This was specifically the YouTube chat said, we need to have readers, that I need to create some glasses since I'm a glasses girl. And so I am responding to what the chat suggested. So we're going to do that. We're going to put up a website. And I think is it Monday, you guys, when the website's going live? We're going to put the website. So think about it, ruminate on it, noodle on it. And we're going to start the voting on Monday. So you guys can tell us which ones you like the best, what colors you like, what shapes you like, what you think would be great. I see somebody asking for David Jolly. David and I have been texting and trying to catch up and make it happen. I will be having David Jolly on. He is running for governor of Florida. We're going to put it back on the map. We are never going to let Florida go. We're not going to abandon them. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Happy Friday. If you're going to be in the members only chat, that's going to start in literally like less than 30 seconds. So go grab a cocktail, get your security, and how you make it again, champagne, cognac, Saint Germain, little drop of grenadine, and a maraschino cherry. Security. Have a great weekend, everybody. Love you and thank you. So please share and like and subscribe. Love you. Peace and good night.
Getting back to the basics, grassroots level. Let me dig a little deeper with the shovel. Plenty can't tell the forest from the trees, and I'm hard to detect, like a black hole in the dark. Injustice anywhere, it's a threat to justice everywhere. Let me make this clear, I got a bone to pick, and I'll never fear the threat of poverty. They don't want to talk about it, they rather party, so I'm a real talk about it. For